This is Chester P. Gross, better known as CP. In 1930, he was engineer for the city of Wisconsin Rapids, and at that time photographed the motion pictures you're about to see. One could hardly class a Model T dump truck as heavy equipment by today's standards, but in the next 60 seconds, you'll see an almost complete inventory of what was once the heavy equipment of the city of Wisconsin Rapids. Certainly much of this equipment was heavy, but again, by today's standards, it was for the most part quite cumbersome and inefficient. The street commissioner's job included many diversified duties, even in 1930. Commissioner Charlie Gertler exhibits the proof as he adds oil to his Model A pickup. We can't help but wonder how his wife must have appreciated the way he wiped the dipstick off on his pants leg. Could be she had the police keeping an eye on Charlie. Patrolman Webb Berard figures he belongs in the basement jail. Webb served on the police force for many years until his retirement. Anyone who knew him could easily identify him from blocks away by his unusual arms-out walk. This wire-wheel Dodge, owned by Carl Yuski, was one of the first cars in the area to boast of a radio. A large part of the equipment was built into a box, which was mounted on the rear seat. You hardly ever see a convertible truck these days, but in 1930 they were all the go. This is a convertible too. Bill Perling, the driver, converted it from a coupe to a truck. No wonder taxes were low. This is Frank Rorick. Frank was city clerk at the time these pictures were taken. And this fast-stepping gentleman was Rudy Exner's predecessor, Todd Payne, chief of police. This fellow carried a lot of weight, Joe Norton, city treasurer. The 2-horsepower job shown here may have been slow, but it carried a big payload. Imagine the aching muscles after a day of lifting trash cans to the top of this iron monster. Of course, there was always the slow, relaxing ride after the box was full, but it looks like filling it could have taken all day. Meanwhile, out at the dump, our zippy little 4-cylinder job, looking much like the hare getting ahead of the tortoise, is just pulling in with its first load of the day. The box was delicately balanced so it could be cranked up with ease. As a matter of fact, on one occasion, a bump on downtown 2nd Street North caused the latch to unhook, and a full load of garbage was dumped all over the street. In 1930, the Water and Light Department was located just off 3rd Avenue near Consolidated Papers, a hodgepodge of brick and wooden garages. This is what you call a king-size pickup. For many years, this truck was the workhorse of the Water and Light Department. The equipment being loaded here tells a story of slow, hard work. The long-handled shovels were a far cry from the powered post-hole diggers of today, and one cannot help but wonder, where did automation actually begin? Perhaps with the wheel. This is Art Hanneman and August Ludwig, both of whom spent most of their lives in service of the city. Seems like there was always time for a little horseplay to help shorten that 6-day week. August looks like he'd walk a mile for a camel, or would he rather switch than fight? There were no fancy cigarette slogans in 1930, but undoubtedly people were smoking less and enjoying it more. As the day wears on, Patrolman Webb Berard decides to put his Harley-Davidson through its paces. This poor bewildered motorist hasn't done a thing to deserve this sort of treatment. Obviously, Webb pulled this deal off for the benefit of our cameraman. The location here is 12th Street North, near the Irving School. Our cameraman CP gets into the act with a few professional gestures. This project is on Market Street between Oak and Saratoga Streets. In this era, before widespread use of the power shovel, a sewer project seldom advanced more than a few feet a day. Men working on the bottom shoveled the dirt up to a scaffold where more men, in turn, shoveled it to the top. If many hands make light work, this shovel brigade certainly appears to prove it. While it is true that wages were low, they sure bought a lot of shovels. This is a scene on 2nd Street South, just below the Conway House. Obviously, the dirt road is in need of repair. The city had almost no blacktop roads, and each summer the surface had to be oiled to control dust. It would hardly be fair to ignore the fire station in this film just because the building has changed little through the years. After all, the crew is different, and so are the trucks. The tall structure on the left is the old T.B. Scott Library. As fire chief, August Miller drove this open car for many years. The scream of sirens wasn't official until Augie buzzed past in his little red roadster. This is the 16th Street pumping station as our camera saw it. The structure has been replaced by a newer building which houses facilities of the Water and Light Department. Here's Carson Burt, who managed the old pumping station. Carson was exceptionally proud of his lawn and shrubs. Undoubtedly, if he were alive, Carson would have been very much disturbed to see all of this dug up to make way for a new building. Our camera is now at the end of 4th Avenue facing north, where a crew of road builders has begun construction of a new Highway 34 to Rudolph. In spite of the elaborate machinery, hard labor still played the major role in preparation and finishing of the project. The F.F. Mingle Company was low bidder on this job. Their giant mixing machine drew roadside superintendents from miles around to watch its flawless performance. This new stretch of highway was destined to cut travel time to Rudolph by almost a third. It eliminated many a narrow bridge and right-angle turn. In fact, it could be referred to as the 1930 version of a superhighway. But all was not work in the 30s. People did have time to relax and enjoy life. Many will long remember this man, Dr. F.X. Pimenville, affectionately known as the Grand Banana. And here's Jake Fullman as he stops to chat with Father Redding, practically an institution in the area. On Sunday morning, the Tri-City Airport, now known as Alexander Field, was an excellent place to go for excitement. As small boys watched the wonderful flying machines, they dreamed of following in the footsteps of the daring men who flew these wood and fabric creations. But not all of these aircraft were made of wood and fabric. For here comes the Tin Goose. This was a giant of the airways, the Ford Tri-Motor. The Nakusa Edwards Paper Company was a national pioneer in company-owned aircraft. The NEPCO trademark was proudly displayed on the plane as a tribute to forward thinking. The Tri-Motor was billed as an extremely safe aircraft and was capable of flying on any one of its 3 engines. In South America, some of these aircraft are still in service. In 1930, when rockets were associated only with the 4th of July, the local airport seemed to be just about as far out in outer space as anyone would ever go. Sunday afternoon in Wisconsin Rapids was a time for America's favorite pastime. Capacity crowds filled the Whitterfield ballpark, and enthusiasm reached a peak seldom equaled in later years. The band, the popcorn wagon, and blaring loudspeaker trumpets, all part of the atmosphere that stirred the excitement of the crowd. In this particular game, Wisconsin Rapids takes on Racine. This was the colorful heyday of such local players as Al Biet, Johnny Keane, Fritz Riebernick, Earl Eastling, Art Plummer, Joe Judnick, Stubb and Larry Huber, John Sandrine, Bob McLean, and others. Undoubtedly, the local boys lost this one since our photographer didn't include a shot of the scoreboard. If you weren't a baseball fan, you probably spent your Sunday afternoon at the local swimming pool. This was as close as you could get to air conditioning on a hot day in 1930. At times, this large pool almost wasn't big enough. As you can probably imagine, many a cat and dog took a forced ride down the giant slide in the background. The slide finally went to the dogs. The old swimming pool was constantly plagued by the threat of high water from the river. Before the construction of the Dubé Dam, flood control sometimes was quite difficult, and a series of good hard showers could send the water cascading down the river with uncontrollable force. Everyone loves a parade, and the crowd on hand for this one leaves little doubt that July 4th, 1930 was a dandy. The floats you will see here will make you wonder whatever happened to those big parades we used to enjoy. Perhaps they went the way of the big circuses, who knows? But let's hope we are no less patriotic than we used to be. Large and small organizations participated in this one. We'll see if we can name a few. The J.R. Reagan Furniture Company was represented by this float. The aircraft division of the Ford Motor Company is symbolized. At this time, Ford was building the tri-motor airplane. Of course, Henry Ford was also building cars, and this still familiar model was his 1930 offering by Anderson's Ford Garage. Here's The Neat Approach by Normington Cleaners. Conservation is stressed here. The Bossert Coal Company, when coal was king. This old pumper was kept on hand for years until the city fathers were sure the motorized fire trucks were dependable. Rotary International. The Wood County Telephone Company, switchboard and all. The prize-winning float of the Hanna Corporation. Wisconsin Valley Creamery Company. Hotel Widder. The Very Fine Ice Cream Company. Even the Elks Club was represented, as was Wood County Normal, Gillmaster Trucking Company, the Water and Light Department for Public Utilities. Father Redding and his altar boys rode on this creation. The corner building in the background was the local post office. In case you're wondering how this streetcar got into the act, perhaps the motorman would explain, I was here first, and he'd be right. This is the streetcar that ran between Wisconsin Rapids and Nakusa. As in this case, local parades would always move aside to allow the trolley car to pass. 1 year after these pictures were taken, the trolley line, which had been operating at a loss, was permanently knocked out of business by a bolt of lightning. Some things never change. Just as it is today, 4th of July evening was always associated with the loud blast of a giant fireworks display. People oohed and ahed in the same way they do now, and the patterns formed by the colorful rockets and ground displays really weren't any different than their modern counterpart. On July 5th, with flags still flying, Officer Bundy was happy to see the town settle back to normal. If you study the parked cars, the small street lamps, and the absence of parking meters, one cannot help but realize many changes have taken place. Nevertheless, in 1930, West Grand Avenue looked exactly like this. The merger of North 1st and 2nd Streets looked pretty much as we see it here. Wisconsin Rapids Savings and Loan occupied the Flatiron Building, where they had already been doing business for a number of years. But what about the future of central Wisconsin? In an ever-changing pattern, central Wisconsin is a picture of progress. Progress in filling the needs of today, progress toward meeting the demands of tomorrow. Central Wisconsin is moving ahead. And ever present in the background is the helping hand of the sound financial institutions where people may borrow and save as their requirements dictate. Yes, Central Wisconsin is moving ahead.